Hello, welcome back to Full Time, and welcome back to us speaking in screens again. After those glorious moments at the NWSL Championship, I kind of miss them. Somehow, it's December, end of the year, we're hibernating, we're reflecting, and I have to announce that this is going to be the last episode that Meg and I do together in 2025. So we have to reflect. We need to talk about our favorite moments of 2025, what we're excited about in 2026, and we're going to do some listener letters because what better way to close out the year between the two of us on this show than to hear from you and engage with your very, very interesting questions. Thank you for rising to the occasion on such short notice. I'm joined, of course, by my co-host, Meg Linehan. Meg, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. I mean, this is our last episode together for a while too, because it's vacation time, holidays for us. And then I go on parental leave next year. So it's going to be a while. It's going to be very strange to not be doing the show on a weekly basis. I feel like it's such a part of my life. I know, it's going to be like a whole season.
Seasons will have passed, and it will definitely be a new NWSL season by the time we reconvene. We will have both gone through like different hairstyles, probably. Baby Salem is gonna be in a whole new phase of life by the time we reconvene. So much change is coming. But before we even get too far ahead, of course, we're gonna have to reflect on a crazy, I don't know about you, but I've just been thinking of some of the stories that I did at the start of the year and where we are now. It's mind-boggling. But before we get into that, we need to discuss some news, which it's been a while since we've had to discuss like hard news on this show, but this is a big one. Haley Carter, we knew from a while ago that she was leaving the Orlando Pride, but as reported by you, we now know the destination that she's headed to, the Washington Spirit. What can you tell us about that story? Because I know you got to chat with Haley ahead of that.
Yeah, I talked to both Haley Carter and Michelle Kang about this, and I think it's such a blockbuster move, right? Like Haley Carter to me is, I think, really at the vanguard of NWSL technical staffs, right? You think about what she accomplished in Orlando, her background, former NWSL player, all of these things. She has built this reputation. And for her to go from one title contender to another is, first of all, not something that necessarily happens in the NWSL all that much from a GM, president of soccer ops point of view. But then this is also Michelle Kang saying, like, I'm going to go find the best person for the job, right? And that's straight up. She said there was no better person than Haley Carter for what she wanted, not just in terms of knowing NWSL and knowing ball and being the master of figuring out green cards and all of the other incredible things that she's done, but also her global ambitions. And that was really the theme, I think, of these conversations of they're not settling for just, trying to be best in class within the NWSL. Haley Carter wants to think bigger, right? I think she has this reputation of being a builder, and she's kind of like, first of all, I also like to win, but second of all, who's to say that this isn't building something, right? Like it's not only building something within the NWSL that sure has existed in a good form before I come in, but wants to build something globally. And that to me is really, really interesting just because I don't think a lot of people talk that game, but these are two women who know how to do it.
Yeah, it very much feels like a meeting of two visionary minds who are interested in taking the league, taking the Washington Spirit into spaces that are sort of unprecedented in the NWSL and potentially in women's soccer. And when I think about the timing of this, which I know your piece that everyone should read at The Athletic also touched on, is considering the personnel, we'll say, at the Washington Spirit and a certain someone who likes to change up her hair color from time to time, who's going to be a free agent soon.
Who is a free agent? And I think that is obviously such a big thing. And it's not just in the Washington Spirit's control. It's certainly not in Haley Carter's sole control. Right. But I think, and I should say, actually, there is the chance that we do record another podcast if we get Trinity Rodman news before we both break for the end of the year, right?
Good point.
I think that is,
we're all on the ready.
Everybody's waiting for this news to drop. But there is this sense of, again, wanting to push the league forward. Haley Carter even said to me, I'm not shy about my opinion on the salary cap, right? I think it's from this different era of the NWSL. And my job as a general manager was always to keep the roster within a certain budget, right? I don't think she's opposed to being smart about money, but Trinity Rodman is the example moving forward. And so it was just interesting to kind of see where they were willing to talk Trinity Rodman and where suddenly people went,
Right. The lips get a little tighter. Yeah. It's fascinating. I have been somewhat joking to people, but in a like crying a little bit way, that this off season is not really going to feel like an off season because, and I'm not only talking about Trinity Rodman, the moves that we've already started to see with transfers in the NWSL, when the transfer window opens internationally, the moves that are going to be made, it's going to be crazy. But I also think back to the conversation that you and I had with Haley Carter during NWSL Championship weekend and how she was talking about her words from that Brene Brown podcast and how one of her main words is service. And so to your point about her ambitions within the Washington Spirit, her ambitions for the NWSL, her ambitions for global women's soccer, the timing of it really feels pivotal in sort of like the larger story of the development of this game and certainly of this league. So like I said, Meg's story about this move is up on The Athletic. Make sure you read it. And while you're at it, make sure that you're following us on all of our socials. We are going to be, like I said, busy during this off season. I'm going to start just putting it in quotes because there's going to be a lot of activity at TA Fulltime on Instagram and TikTok. Our esteemed video producer, Leah Griffin, is always putting together great stuff for us that you don't always hear or see on this podcast. I say see because you can also watch us on YouTube. And for the OGs who like to keep things on the slightly more analog side of the internet, you can always reach out to us fulltime at theathletic.com, which a lot of you have done with your questions. Like I said, thank you so much. We love to hear from you. And I always get a sense of where people's minds are at based on the questions they ask, which is a huge help for me as a journalist and certainly for us on this show. So thank you to everyone who's reached out. I'm going to tell you right now, we're not going to be able to get to all of them, but you never know. Some of these questions, even if they don't get answered on the podcast, might inspire future stories, future episodes. So just know that we read everything that we've received in every DM, and we appreciate you. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Meg and I's end of year top threes and 2026 hype top threes, something like that. We'll keep workshopping the name when we get back. Okay, Meg, I don't know about you, but I kind of had trouble coming up with my top three moments. I have a list of 7, and I'm just going to vibe it out. We're going to find out what my 3, 2, and 1
in real
are.
time.
Yeah. Like how I live my life, honestly.
Yeah, I found this a really interesting exercise because I think when you're trying to, it's the season of getting all of the music that you listen to and the books you've read and like
Spotify
all
raps.
right. And so there is this sense of like you want to feel like, okay, well, I watched these games and these goals and whatever it is, and I tried to, for the most part, stay away from that because like there are definitely games that stick out in my brain, but just in terms of, I tried to just think of things that made me happy this year. That was my approach
criteria
to this. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't find myself going to specific games or goals either. And in addition to things that moved me, not even always like toward happiness, but moved me like emotionally in like a I'm covered in goosebumps way, I also was thinking about this in terms of like moments that left an imprint on the discourse of women's soccer. Not to give away too much, but I did find myself toward the end when I started thinking about like my number one moment nominees. I do think it's worth like acknowledging things that have changed the way that we talk about women's soccer. So for me, it was that in addition to things that like I'm going to want to tell grandchildren about type of thing.
Okay. All right. Well, on that note, I need to hear your number 3. We're going to go 3 to 1.
Okay.
Countdown.
So my number 3, and I also should say that I've tried to be as broad as possible so I can encompass a lot of things within like an umbrella.
I love how we just keep cheating.
I know.
Every game we play.
I am so terrible at like lists because my brain just doesn't work that way. But my number 3 is Jaden Shaw's journey this year, which allows me to also acknowledge Gotham's championship, but through the lens of Jaden Shaw. Who could have seen when she started the year with the San Diego Wave, that first transfer, that trade to the North Carolina Courage, given what San Diego had been going through, I don't think that was very surprising, but I think a lot of us were surprised that she didn't have the sort of splashy, successful time at the North Carolina Courage that I think a lot of people thought.
Yep.
She was in and out of the national team, senior team, 23s. I've said this before, but you could just sort of see on her body language during the North Carolina chapter that things weren't going right. And given how young she was, given how much of impression she'd already made at the national team level, given the ticking clock, you know, to 2027, I think there was a lot of concern over a young player who had already shown so much promise for club and country. So for her to then move to Gotham in the way that she did with that record-breaking transfer fee, I think there was a lot of expectation. And again, considering how young she is and the season that she'd had, I think that nobody would have been hypercritical if she had taken the route of sort of like just getting settled and finding her feet. But the impact that she made with that team, I mean, who knows where they would have been if they hadn't signed her when she did in the postseason. All of the goal contributions, the assists, the free kick, like, it just speaks to, I think, the guidance that I imagine she's had around her during this time. It speaks to, I think, her mental fortitude, the faith that she had and all those risks that she took. I mean, 3 different club teams in one calendar year is crazy.
Yeah, it's and then big for her to, Jessica McDonald energy. Like, that's...
Big, yes. And then for her to cap it off with that goal with the U.S. Women's National Team in the second Italy game just felt poetic in a way that if someone had written it like in a script, you would have been like, okay, that's a bit too saccharine, but it's real. And I love that for her. So she's my number 3. What about you, Meg?
I had the introduction of World Sevens, which I think, you know, I was trying to think about, okay, NWSL, yes, but just in terms of having this sort of alternate competition, I thought the first edition was just so fun in a way that we're just like, I don't want to say like I turned my brain off watching it because I didn't, like it still feels like soccer, but it feels different enough that it itches a different part of my brain, right? And I think the teams really engaged with it in a very fun way. I mean, again, like the fact that Bayern was the team, I think showing the most part, like was just such a surprising twist where I was like, totally. Okay, who knew that Germans could be this fun right now. And so I think seeing that and seeing, you know, former players like Ali Wagner, like Tobin Heath, who's on the show, talking about it and what they want to accomplish with World Sevens, right? To think about how to bring in new generations of fans. I thought was just I had doubts. I really had doubts going into World Sevens thinking like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And I don't think it was perfectly executed, but I think there's so much promise there. It's going to be really interesting to see this version that's happening in Miami very soon, and then where it goes from here.
Yeah, and I didn't mention this, but I'm in Fort Lauderdale as we speak. I will be covering World Sevens. I'm very curious about how this second iteration is going to go, twice in the same calendar year. Very different teams, lots of South American representation in this one. North American too, NWSL and NSL team, couple Liga MX femenil teams. Yeah, I always say that you got to give like these entities and these ideas a couple reps before they really settle into who they are. But that second year is usually just as like informative as the first, because it's like the splash is over. Now how are we implementing things and adding new? But that is a great shout. The level of FOMO, I think, from that first World Sevens.
Yeah, I think everybody was like, oh, okay.
Why am I not
been there?
Yes, 100%. Okay, honestly, naming my number 2, I think was harder than my number 1. I'm going to go with Nigeria accomplishing Mission 10, winning their 10th WAFCON. And the way that I guess this is sort of like going into a game specific sort of like mention, because they were behind 2-0 against Morocco in Morocco.
Yep.
And I don't know if, for people who have not watched like AFCON, WAFCON games or any other sort of national team game in Morocco, I honestly think that from like a national team perspective, that's got to be one of the hardest countries to play in, because Moroccans love their Moroccan national teams. They are firing lasers into the crowd. It's a really, really tough environment. Yeah. And I think given where Nigeria is, I sort of, at the risk of sort of drawing parallels, I do view Nigeria and sort of the responsibility that they carry to advance African women's soccer, similar to what the US 99ers were sort of doing globally.
I get that, yeah. Or even like England Euros when they were, like it's that sort of, we have to define the importance of this sport to an entire country and like justify it in a way that feels really heavy, right? Yep. And just also knowing everything that Nigeria has gone through ever, right? Like there's a lot.
That part too. So for them to come from behind 2-0 and win 3-2, I thought was really special. And I am really, really hoping that WAFCON and Copa America Femenina, which was the close second for my number 2, because that final between Brazil and Colombia, honorable mention. And Marta alone, like,
just wait, Tamerra.
Okay. I see where you're going. But those are 2 tournaments for me that I'm like willing it into existence, that they're going to get more attention, more visibility, easier access, and more hype, because they are so much fun. So Nigeria winning their 10th WAFCON for me is number 2.
Yeah, and I really wanted to turn to the summer tournaments this year, just because I think it was such an interesting time for us here in the US, where the US really were not the center of attention in any way, shape, or form, right? We had Euros, Copa America, and WAFCON all happening at the same time, and I was struggling to pick between all of these moments, but I wanted to turn maybe less about the soccer and more about the environment. So what I had as my second was just the fact of how much Switzerland stepped up as host nation for the Euros, because like, yes, the Euros has the prestige, has the TV deal in a way that the other 2 don't. But I do, European soccer is still going to be such an important force for this sport, right? And so to see countries like Switzerland that are not necessarily historical powerhouses, like Germany just announced actually as host for the 2029 tournament. So you expect this out of Germany, right? You expect it out of the Netherlands, out of England, all of these other hosts. But Switzerland, I think there were real questions about how they were going to take to this tournament and host this tournament. And every time I saw a crowd shot of the streets in Switzerland, first of all, again, the FOMO, real. Again. But second of all, like, these are the moments where, host nations and federations and clubs have to really work to harness. So like, yes, this is a one-off moment on my end of year list, but I think it's also my hope that we see more and more of this foundational building happening every time a country like Switzerland hosts, every time Morocco hosts, right? Like, we're seeing the impacts of these tournaments, and maybe it's not as fast as we would like, and there's always backsliding and all of that kind of fun stuff, but yeah, the vibes out of Switzerland I thought were just like truly some of the best scenes. The fact that Switzerland stepped up like that was just such a great moment for me.
Yeah, I think that's a great shout. And it also, I think, speaks to what smaller countries can accomplish. And honestly, even how smaller countries can benefit from hosting these big tournaments. I mean, I think about being able to float down the river as a means of transportation alone did things to my FOMO that I didn't even know were possible, but also the actual like access to public transportation, how it felt like the country sort of wrapped itself around that tournament in ways that reminded me a little bit of Australia, New Zealand in some of those like host cities within the 2023 World Cup. But yeah, it sets such a high bar. I think anytime you're feeling FOMO to that degree, it's usually an indicator that someone's doing something right. Okay, all right. I'm going a little bit... I'm swerving a bit, Meg, for my number 1. And going back to what I said about moments that I think have shifted conversations fundamentally, I think, in women's soccer. And for me, it was when Alyssa Thompson went to Chelsea. I'm not
unexpected.
I know.
Number 1.
I had a philosophical shift. I'm not saying... I mean, I feel pretty neutral, honestly, at this point about, like, the move itself. But I love, especially from a journalistic standpoint and kind of like an intellectual one, the conversations that we've been having since that move. And I think the doors... both ways, I think, eventually, maybe not at the same time or in the same way, but the doors that have been opened by that particular move in ways that feel even different from Naomi Girma's move earlier this year. Crazy to think that this was all in the same year.
It's a long year. It's a long year.
I know. It felt like 2 different years between Naomi Girman and Alyssa Thompson both going to Chelsea. But I think the conversations that we have had since have been really like paradigm shifting in the women's game. And even though there's like debate, and I think the fact that Alyssa Thompson's move happened prior to Trinity Rodman becoming a free agent is changing the way that we're talking about Trinity Rodman. I love that these conversations are happening. I think it's so important for the growth of the game. Regardless of what these players choose, the fact that they have choices, I think is so important. And the sort of shock, I think, for a lot of people about the timing of Alyssa's move is what made this conversation feel different, like I said, from Naomi's. She's not going to be the first or the last. We're going to keep having these conversations, but I do think that like in the scrapbook of 2025, she's getting a whole page for me. So that was my number one. And honestly, it alleviated the pressure of like choosing more of a soccer specific on the pitch moment because I couldn't even fathom the thought, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, so I cheated big time with my number one. And also, like, I'm going to preface it with, I am who I am. There should be no surprise.
God,
but for me, number one, just Marta in general, right? Between the Copa final, as you had already alluded to, that quarterfinal run, I just think, like, the fact that Marta, at this point in her career, right? I feel like I've written 3 different retirement pieces for her at this point.
Right.
Is still playing and still able to surprise and delight me in new and fascinating ways. At this, like, her year, just as a whole, was so interesting and so fascinating and I think so emotional in a lot of ways, right? You think about how Orlando got knocked out of the playoffs, but also, again, that moment of handing the ball over to Luana to take the PK, right? Like, all of these things happening. So I was just like, I'm cheating. It's Marta. Deal with it.
No, and who would begrudge you for that? Even if like so many singular moments for her this year could have easily made either one of our top 3.
I mean, we could have a top 3 Marta.
Right. 100%. It's crazy. And the feeling of overwhelming gratitude that I have, and it sounds corny, but I don't care. Anytime I get to watch her play in person,
it's truly
it's like I've not really experienced that.
I never want to take it for granted.
Yeah.
Never want to take it for granted. To be able to witness her in person and be able to talk to her as a reporter and get, you know, the fact that she's still just like saying new and fascinating things every time she talks too. It's just, I don't know. We're never going to see another player like her.
It's truly a privilege anytime she touches the ball for club or country. That's a great one. And as someone who's did something sort of similar with Jaden Shaw, I totally get it. Lists are hard, okay? Yep. And we gotta...
It was a big year.
Yes. And
big year.
Abundant mindset, you know, that's all that is.
And now we got to turn to 2026.
Which I struggled with a little bit, I think, because I still feel so firmly in 2025. But at the same time, what is time? I don't know. But there's a lot to look forward to, I think, in 2026. So, Meg, let's start with you for your number 3 in terms of 2026 hype.
Yeah, I, again, took a big picture approach for the most part. Well, at least with this first one. But for me, it's what I am calling the NWSL arms race, right? Because I think we have seen time and time again these teams sort of like level up and level up. You think about Yael Averbuch West reacting to the 2023 Gotham win by going and getting every free agent under the sun to put on the roster. You think about the Spirit adding Haley Carter in this offseason. How is Orlando going to react to this? What is Portland going to do in the offseason? So I think we're going to start really seeing, like, owners are going to really have to pony up for 2026. And I think watching that unfold is going to be so interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And it sort of touches on a theme that has run through this year of even our shows, is our sort of anticipation of a division of sorts happening between the serious and the unserious.
Yes.
To put it
that's
succinctly.
100% what it is. It's really like who's in it to win it, right? And we know there's a few teams that are in it to win it.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're the ones who keep showing up in the postseason, even if they enter as the bottom seed and end up winning championships, which seems to be the Gotham way.
All right, T. Number 3.
My number 3, maybe it's a little bit boring because we also talk about this a lot, but I am excited about expansion, specifically from like a market perspective. We know that unless you're San Diego Wave, at least so far, and I guess Bay FC too, the expectation of what expansion teams are going to accomplish in their first year is necessarily tempered. But when I think about Denver as a women's sports city, potentially, when I think about Boston, definitely as a sports city, but the potential for these cities to sort of galvanize women's soccer fans, NWSL fans, I get really excited. I was in Denver earlier this year for the U.S. Women's National Team. And of course, Denver, I don't even think they had their name yet, the Denver Summit, had a lot of activations around. And as someone, I guess, who also has a lot of extended family in Denver, I have seen the potential there. And I'm really excited to see where that goes in that first year. We can talk about sort of like the World Cup hype. That remains to be seen, but I'm really excited to see how the fan bases galvanize around these teams in 2026.
For me, I figured I would go a little more personal just because I do have half the year at home.
Yes.
But for me, that means Vermont Green. And like men's team aside, in theory, we are getting a women's team here in Burlington. So for me, my hype list is being able to bring my son to Vermont Green women's games, which I'm very excited about. I'm gonna have to figure out merch for the baby, but that's my pick.
Yeah. And I mean, anytime you have to figure out merch, it's like, oh my God, I feel so bad for Meg. She has to go shopping.
I have to add more soccer things to my house. God forbid.
Right. We can't wait to see what you pick. If you decide to post any of it, we will be paying attention because I can only imagine.
All right.
That's a great one.
Let's go.
We're getting gifted another WAFCON next year and very early. Mark your calendars for March, which... I mean, it stresses me out even as I feel hype about it because this is going to clash with the start of the NWSL season. It's going to clash with Champions League. But you guys, Malawi qualified for WAFCON, which means we're going to get, hopefully, willing her back from injury and good health, the Shawinga sisters competing in their first WAFCON, which I have been waiting for with bated breath. So if and hopefully when that happens, it's just going to make that tournament even more fun. Like I said, this is another continental tournament with the Asia Cup, with Copa America that need and deserve the same hype as CONCACAF, as UEFA. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And we're getting it so early. So I feel like it's going to be a great way to sort of like kick off at least the start of the NWSL season. I know WSL and a lot of the European leagues will be mid-season by then, but I'm really excited about that one.
All right, for me, it felt like the most obvious choice, but it's got to be World Cup qualifiers in November, right? I mean, everything... I feel like 2025, we lived through the era of exploration under Emma Hayes, and now everything has been building to this moment in November. Fortunately, I will be back to work for it. I'm sure we'll be on the road for it. But this is where, everything becomes real in a really... And yes, it is CONCACAF qualifiers, though I'm old enough to remember 2011 and how that went for the U.S. They cannot take anything for granted. But this is going to be the real start for the road to 2027. And things are gonna really kick off in a serious way.
Yeah, that's a great one. Mine is sort of related to that. I'm calling it the returns.
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
Definitely the anticipated return, I'll say, of Triple Espresso, Trinity Rodman, of course, from injury, Mel Swanson, and Sophia Wilson from their maternity leaves. But also, I wouldn't even be able to name all of the players globally who have been out with just ACL injuries, let alone other ones that have led to sort of long-term recoveries. And I know that this is unfortunately sort of like a rolling, like a revolving door of like health and people who are out. But I'm thinking of players like Lauren James, Lena Oberdorf, who just picked up another one. Right. Like there are so many greats that we have not had the pleasure of watching on the pitch due to injury. But specifically, I am really excited for how certain returns, and think specifically triple espresso is going to make things 10 times more interesting than they've already been with the U.S. women's national team because they're preparing for the Olympics. And I just keep thinking back to I was expecting more heat when we did our roster predictions, our latest ones, and how I did not have Sophia or Mallory on because I don't know what they're going to be like when they return, but I am still looking forward to the return. So it's always nice to have beloved players back on the pitch, especially those who did not choose to leave it. Yes. So I'm excited for whoever comes back to be back. All right. I feel like that was a great marrying of wrap up the year and things that we're looking forward to. There are so many more. Like I said, the transfer window, I already know is going to be mad. But we will keep you covered on that, even though it won't be with the two of us together. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we get back, we're getting into this mailbag. It would have been rude, I think, of us for us to close out the year without diving into the mailbag. Like we just said, a lot of stuff has happened this year. Things that I have to be reminded even took place in 2025. And of course, there are going to be questions with that. So like I mentioned at the top of the show, there would have been no way for us to get through all of these questions, but we thank each and every one of you who took the time to write into us. I also want to note that there were some questions that definitely fell under a specific umbrella, specifically the U.S. women's national team, whether you want our thoughts on the starting front three, especially with the returns of players that we're expecting to be back in action this year. We see you, we hear you, we definitely have thoughts, but we're not going to be able to get to all of those because they sort of warrant a whole separate episode at this point. So I just want to acknowledge that we saw that, but just give us a minute because it's coming. We're putting a pin in it. But we do have a good number of questions that I thought have pretty good range. I love a good silly one in there. So let's kick this off, Meg, from Julia, staying on theme with 2026. I really like this one. What city do you, and I've been thinking about it, what city do you want to host the 2026 NWSL Championship and why?
So I'm going to zig where I think a lot of people are expecting a zag because generally we have seen like expansion teams kind of come in and then get that moment. And I think for both Denver and Boston, they're not going to be in their permanent homes to start. So I almost want to say like, you'll get your turn, calm down. And I want to go back to, which is shocking for me as an East Coast person, but I want to go back to the West Coast and I want to think about Pacific Northwest. We haven't gotten a championship in Portland or Seattle in a long time. And part of that is because of playing surface. But now I think if we want to prod people into investing and putting some money where their mouth is, Portland, put a grass surface on that field for a championship. Like, we can do it. And so I think there is a chance to kind of return to some OG NWSL roots and go back to one of the original markets. So I'm going to lean Portland, but like I would really like Seattle to also get a moment at some point to host a championship.
Yeah, that's a good shout. This was something that I can't remember who said it during championship weekend, but I've heard some bubblings. I think there might be a quorum there for the Pacific Northwest. Maybe it's because I'm in Florida right now and I'm really enjoying this December sun. Slightly unhinged thought, I'm not going to go with this, but I do think about what it would mean for a non-NWSL market to host a championship. There are some really interesting things happening in Fort Lauderdale right now, but I think my official pick is also West Coast, and it's LA. I am thinking about it also from like a marketing standpoint. Yes, I know we just had one in California. I know. I'm Californian. I'm biased. It's unbearable at times. I'm sorry. It's just who I am. But I think about if it's not Angel City who makes it to the final, what's the place that people are going to be excited to visit? What's a place that they're going to be able to plan like full sort of weekend trips around? I think that LA has the resources. They've been pretty involved in World Sevens. They know how to put on an event. And I would like to see it. Yeah. It doesn't feel fair. I acknowledge that. But I just like the idea of warm, or at least
you just want a warm championship.
I just want a warm championship.
It was not that bad in San Jose, I want to say.
That's
like
true.
During the day, it was quite lovely.
And I think it'd be nice in Seattle and Portland in November, too.
I think, it would be like brisk, but not terrible.
Yeah.
I do think, to your point, a major media market, I would like to see the NWSL figure out how to have a New York City, I guess, New Jersey championship, just because I think that unlocks so much more for them. It's where that HQ is. Like, you have a chance to finally put yourself in this sort of, New York City, just in terms of TV and morning shows and everything. Like,
so
it opens a lot of doors. And so that, I think, also we're just compiling a wish list.
We're thinking
point,
out loud.
So all right, let's move on back to expansion from Noah. Where are you more excited to go next year, Denver or Boston, and who will have the bigger home opener? And first, I want to say real quick, I think we know Denver's going to have the bigger home opener just because they have moved that game into the NFL stadium. They've sold a ton of tickets. Don't be surprised by that one. But T, where Denver, Boston, trying to maybe swing both, depending on the schedule, I guess?
I mean, I'm definitely going to try and swing both because I'm me and I want to be everywhere all of the time. I'm excited about Denver, but I have like personal family roots in that city.
You're just like, I would like to go to Denver.
I would like to go to Denver. It's a great city. I have spent a lot more time there too, so I have a lot more like memories that I associate with Denver. I played soccer in Denver when I was a kid doing ODP. Like I said earlier, I know how much potential has long existed there in terms of it being like a formidable soccer city. And I just think that opening weekend is going to be really special and a manifestation of things that people who know Denver have known now for literal decades. That said, I like what Boston's doing, and having spoken with Commissioner Berman, she is of the belief that both of these expansion teams are going to set new precedents in terms of their opening weekends. I don't know if she knows things I don't. I'm sure she does. So I'm just putting that out there, not to be too diplomatic about it. But I'm leaning a little bit toward Denver. What about you?
I think I feel like I have to lean a little towards Boston just as a Massachusetts native, but also just knowing the long history, right? And I'm really hoping that, I know Boston Legacy is a new team and an expansion team, and it does not have direct ties to the Breakers, but Boston has such great historic women's soccer presence and just a historic sports city in general. And I really hope that we see some of that history come through, whether that's, getting someone like Christine Lilly or whatever at the first game. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately I will be on, we'll see if we do a little road trip with the baby in the back, but TBD, but I am probably leaning Boston.
Fair. Now we have a balanced answer. I like that too. All right, next up from Haley. Again, staying on the theme of expansion. Confused why Atlanta could buy in when there was just competition between markets.
Yeah, this is just, I think, more a quick clarification than anything else because, yes, there was that sort of formal expansion process that got us our previous teams. And now basically the rules of expansion have changed where it is going to be kind of just open season for teams to come in and do their pitch. And to be fair, I think when Arthur Blank says, hello, I would like to give you $165 million, the NWSL is going to say, yes, thank you. And see you in 2027. See you in 2020. Like, when do you want to start? Cool. Yeah. We'll see you there.
Yeah, and that's why I really like, I mean, you were talking about a different sort of arms race, but expansion is definitely part of that too. It's open season.
Definitely.
And whoever wants to write the check can, they get some space.
All right, let's go to England. Let's go to England from Caroline. In light of WSL football's preseason rebrand and the recent League Cup draw debacle, is English women's soccer in an identity crisis? Meanwhile, every English person listening to us is like, watch your step, Americans, as you answered this question.
I mean, I think identity crisis is maybe a bit stronger than how I would characterize it. But I do think, I was just talking to someone about this earlier, the sort of cross-pollination, both on the sporting side and culturally, between women's professional soccer in the US and England is forcing both sides to reckon with how they want to grow and how they want to compete with each other, essentially, because at the end of the day, the strength of these leagues depends on who's playing for them. And something that Tobin Heath said that I found super fascinating in the A Touch More live show that we were both at, Meg, over NWSL Championship weekend, was about this like the American specific approach to sports and how it's very superstar driven. It's very much an entertainment business over here. Yeah. And so I do think as we're getting more players from the NWSL and from the US, like Alyssa Thompson, Naomi, on top of the Americans who have already been there, I would not be surprised if the WSL is reckoning with how they want to harness that sort of star power in ways that they have not really had to think about before. And I'm not attributing the that League Cup draw debacle to that specifically, but I do think that it was an attempt for them to bring in some new sort of elements of entertainment that they hadn't done before. And unfortunately for them, it went very poorly. But if you sort of like look broadly at what they were trying to do by bringing in influencers to bring a little bit more visibility, I mean, we've seen versions of that in the NWSL, unwell cough, you know, like
exactly where I was about to take it.
So yeah, maybe not an identity crisis, but I think they're wrestling with some questions, and I think that that's a good thing.
I agree with that. I think the place my brain took this question is, you know, the NWSL is this independent league. It has a lot of teams. You think about the teams that do really well and they're independent from a men's club, right? And that is not necessarily the situation that's happening in England, where you have all of these, you know, Premier League clubs that now have a WSL side, right? And so there is this tradition on the men's side that is not necessarily shared on the women's side, right? Generally clubs for years operated as kind of afterthoughts and little sisters to the big men's club. Like if you knew who was on the cutting room floor first, it was never going to be the Premier League club or the Championship club, whatever it is. So I think there's also that of trying to figure out how to find their own space, right? And to kind of push, like, I think they're looking at clubs like an Angel City, right? And going, okay, how do we get that? Because like we have the soccer side of it locked down, right? Like we've got, you look at Chelsea and they're saying we're one of the best teams ever, right? Just historically on the men's and women's side. Why don't we have sort of that brand identity situation that Angel City has going for them? And so that I think is some of the tension that's happening here as well in terms of how do you compete in that space? And so I think that's from the rebrand point of view. I also think there's just something about it in football, soccer in general, where we have gone through this like mind wipe of wanting to erase old crests, old badges, whatever it is, and redesign them for this modern age. And you lose so much of the character. And to be fair, on the women's side in WSL, half the time that's happening because the men's side have decided to do it. But for the WSL to think about, okay, how do we try to harness the energy and the growth of women's sports? Well, we need a new brand or a new crest for the league. And to be fair, the NWSL, I think, has been trying to go through that same exact question and figure out what should its identity be moving forward. And the redesign of the NWSL crest is in the void somewhere. But they want to go through that same process. And so I just think there's something in everybody's brain right now going, the way that we have to harness this energy is to come up with this kind of bland new logo right now. So it's not just a WSL problem, it's an everyone problem.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Michelle Kang did with Lyon earlier this year too with their rebrand. It's not the WSL, but same kind of concept. And that happened after they sort of were able to distinguish and separate themselves from the men's side. So both a WSL thing and much broader.
Yes.
But I like that question a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, next from Soccer Mama 90. Hey, assuming that's your birth year, millennials in the house on Instagram. Even the Instagram part, very millennial. But an unhinged question, Soccer Mama, one player to play forever in their prime. And then she's like, or they're like, go. What a big question to end with, go. Like, it's just something that I'm sure some people do think about this.
To be fair, Soccer Mama 90 did say their answer was Megan Rapinoe, right? Like, they could just watch Megan Rapinoe play forever. What a fascinating question, because I also think it prompts, like, do you pick someone that had, like, this short, sweet prime where you're just like, oh my God, why didn't I get 10 years of this, right? And in my brain, the two immediate answers there for me were Lauren Holiday and Sam Mewis. Or do you want to pick someone? I mean, like we were talking earlier, like Marta's kind of already living this question.
Right.
In real time.
Marta may have inspired the question for all we know. I mean.
But Tamerra, who are you thinking for this one?
My approach to this was a player that I did not really get a chance to watch when they were in their prime.
Like that.
Sort of like so I can selfishly like enjoy it now.
Yeah. Even time travel.
Yeah. And I sort of arrived at it based on conversations that I've had with players who are still playing about the impact that this player had on them. And for me, that's Caroline Seger. Something about midfielders. That's been an interesting theme across like all the names that we've mentioned. But I just, every time Caroline's name has been brought up, and I really hope I get to speak with her this weekend at World Sevens because she's going to be here, I've heard. She has been a player that I knew about even before, you know, players like Kenza Dali had brought them up earlier this year when I've interviewed her. But the way that players speak about her and the impact that she had on their game has just made me wish that I had been present when she was in her prime. And if we're talking forever, I would like the opportunity to experience that. So she was my pick. I had to go with like a narrow route. Otherwise, I would have been sitting with that question for probably too long.
You said Caroline's name, and then I was like, oh, Hamari Sawa. Why didn't I come up with her? Ugh. Okay. Anyway, let's close it out. Our pal Sandra, what are your top 3 holiday movies, and which U.S. Women's National Team player most embodies said movie? I had to physically write this list out, Tamerra. I don't know about you.
Yeah, me too. I had to do that same with our top 3 moments of each year because so many to choose from. I'm already like apologizing to the Christmas movies that I'm not naming because I have a lot. But I love this question. It marries like 2 of my favorite things this time of year. I think you should kick it off though.
All right. I have a very like firm list and also a weird way of how I approached it. But I
love it.
First one, Family Stone for me, annual rewatch. And so my question was, whose family would I most want to see in a holiday movie? Immediate answer, Rose Lavelle. There's one. Number 2, Muppet Christmas Carol. Crucial movie. What player would I most want to see as the only human in a Muppet movie? And my brain said Croy Bethune right now. Wouldn't you would want to watch that, right?
I like that.
Okay.
I thought you were going to say Rose Lavelle again because that's who came to mind with that specific prompt. But we need range here. So yes, I can see that. Number
3, I tried to go in a slightly different direction for a holiday movie. For those that watch Hallmark movies, which is not usually me, to be perfectly fair, 2023, there was one that's a Hanukkah time travel movie called Round and Round. It's delightful. I highly recommend it. But then that prompted which player is most likely to beat a time loop conundrum, and the obvious answer there is Naomi Girma.
I like that. I love your methodology. I was a bit more rushed in my answering of this question, so mine is not as sophisticated, but I like the range of your films. I like the way that you approached how you're selecting each player. Excellent list. Okay, my first one, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, the claymation version. Every year I have to watch this movie. I think that claymation suite is just some of the best cinematography I've ever seen, and just the artistry. I love it. It's so nostalgic for me. My favorite song on that movie is Put One Foot in Front of the Other, and I know I've already mentioned Jaden Shaw, but I feel like her approach to this year was very much put one foot in front of the other, and look where it got her. So she, I think, embodies that specific song, but I just am putting her in that movie. Second one, Home Alone,
of course.
Classic. I could sort of go a few different ways. I can go with sort of like who embodies the youthful energy from Home Alone, but I'm also thinking like who could manage being home alone.
Okay.
And I'm also going Naomi because she embodies that responsibility, wise beyond her years, already, has been wearing the captain's armband. It's not just a this year thing or even a last year thing. And then my last one, it's broadly holiday. You know those movies that are not necessarily like centered around Christmas or holiday, but you watch it really only around the holidays? The Preacher's Wife.
Okay.
I think because of the strength of that soundtrack, the player that I most associate, and I'm going a bit left field because she hasn't had a ton of looks with the national team this year, but it's hard for me to think of actors and a singer like Whitney Houston and Denzel and not think of Crystal Dunn.
Say, obvious pick right there.
Yeah. And she's someone that to kind of touch on the things that we're going to be looking for in 2026. I'm very curious what moves she's going to be making with club. I'm curious if she's going to try to work her way back into the national team. Emma Hayes spoke about her earlier this year. So that was sort of my way of touching on that too.
I like it.
But that's my
list.
It.
I will say when you said Home Alone, my brain was like Emily Sonnet.
Oh my God, that's a good shout too. Going the other way, kind of. With all due respect.
But like,
yes.
If you had to defend your house,
yes,
kind of vibe, Emily Sonnet.
Emily Sonnet would have definitely crushed up to me, that was like the best trick. Crushing up those sharp looking like shards of ornaments. Yep. And now I want to go watch the movie. Okay, that's our show this week. Thank you for being here with us each step of the way of this crazy year that in some ways felt like 5 smashed into 1, but also went by in the blink of an eye. I don't know exactly how that works. But we're here now, and we appreciate every single one of you who, like I said, has written in, who's engaged with us on social media, following us, who came up to us and said hi at the NWSL Championship. Shout out 7-year-old Kennedy, who I took a photo with before the game, with her Esther Gonzalez jersey. I will never forget that. Such a sweet moment. We appreciate each and every one of you. And even though this is going to be our last episode together for some time, make sure that you keep following us, like I said, on Instagram, on TikTok. We are going to still keep chugging along, and you can always watch our episodes on YouTube. In case you didn't know, I've only been saying it all year, but no judgment. The Athletic has been partnering with Yahoo to deliver the very best coverage of women's sports, which you can find in the Women's Sports Hub at sports.yahoo. You'd think by now I would have memorized it because I've only been saying it every year to drag myself as well. But until we're there, sports.yahoo.com/women-sports. The link, of course, is going to be in the show notes. Meg, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I mean, I'll be back next week, so I'll
this
retain
is just goodbye for us together. I forgot.
But like goodbye, this is a Michelle Branch goodbye to you .mp3.
What a callback.
I will. It's going to be so strange to not do this every week with you. So I hope people will keep listening and keep following. And again, if you want to watch the vibes happening on YouTube, you can do that on YouTube at TA Fulltime. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Sometimes we're in the comments. You never know.
Smash that like button, like they say.
Yeah.
I'm Tamerra Griffin. I am going to be watching each and every one of those Christmas movies that I mentioned, probably with some extra something special in my mug of hot cocoa, if you know what I mean, because it's been a long year and I'm trying to be cozy, even though I'm in sunny Florida right now. But you can catch me doing those things on Instagram and Blue Sky.
And I am Meg. Again, I'll be back next week. But yeah, we're going to go get our Christmas tree from a Christmas tree farm here in Vermont at some point this week. Salem's first Christmas, so very excited about that. Again, the cozy vibe is going to be off the charts. So everybody be cozy. Yes, be cozy, take it easy, and also gird your loins because, like I said, the off season is going to be. But also expect chaos. Right. Like we always do. We're always living in multiple worlds, trying to be calm and cozy and anticipating chaos at any given moment. Full Time is not possible without our podcast producer, Theo Lloyd Hughes, our video producer, Leah Griffin, and our executive producer, Emily Olson. Thank you, as always, for listening. We appreciate all of you so much, and we'll see you soon.